Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I had flown down to Philly for a week-long business trip. Little did I know that it would turn into a tale of vengeance that would satisfy even the most avid subscribers of r/pro revenge. My trip was relatively uneventful until that fateful Friday when I encountered a cab ride I would never forget. The week had been a whirlwind of meetings and presentations, and finally, it was time to head back home. I called a client and they promptly arranged a cab to take me to the airport. I had used the same cab company throughout my stay, and they had been reliable up until this point. As I settled into the back seat of the cab, I couldn't help but notice that something was off. The driver seemed distracted, constantly fiddling with his phone and not paying proper attention to the road. I nervously cleared my throat and politely asked him to focus on the road. A few miles into the journey, disaster struck. The distracted driver collided with another car. Thankfully, it wasn't a high-speed collision, but it was enough to jolt us and send our belongings flying. Fortunately, no one was injured, and both drivers bowled over to assess the damage. I knew I had to do the responsible thing and provide a statement to the police about the accident. While waiting for the cops to arrive, I looked at the taxi meter and noticed it was still running, despite our unplanned stop. I pointed this out to the driver, who seemed unfazed by the whole situation. After what felt like an eternity, the police arrived and I explained the circumstances of the accident. The cop was worried about my well-being due to the black eye I had sustained earlier in the week, but I assured him I was fine. I just wanted to get to the airport and make my flight. As I waited for the police report, I realized that the cab driver was making no effort to stop the meter from running. I called him out on it and he reluctantly turned it off. By the time the ordeal was over, I had been at the accident scene for close to an hour. When I finally got into a new cab that the company had sent, I knew I was running out of time to catch my flight. I asked the new driver to hurry as much as possible and he did his best to make up for the lost time. But the damage had already been done and I would have to rush to make it to the airport. I couldn't believe the audacity of the cab company. You'd think that if one of their drivers had an accident with a passenger in the car, they would prioritize getting that passenger to their destination safely. Instead, not only did the second driver ask me to pay for the ride, but he also informed me that the owner of the cab company insisted that I pay for the first cab meter as well. I couldn't help but feel a burning sense of injustice. I calmly explained to the second driver that while I understood the law allowed them to charge me for the ride, common decency and good business practice should dictate otherwise. I told him that if they hadn't charged me, I would have given him a generous tip. But now, as I was offended by their behavior, he would receive no tip from me. And then I hatched a plan that would not only seek justice for myself, but also teach this cab company a lesson they would never forget. You see, my client in Philly was a major bank, not Bank of America, but one of similar size. They frequently had consultants and contractors like me coming in to work with them, and they always relied on this cab company for local transportation. Knowing that I would be returning to Philly in just 2 weeks, I decided to take matters into my own hands. On Monday morning, I made a call to my contact at the bank. I explained the entire ordeal from the accident to the unjust fare charges, and I asked him ever so politely to find another cab company for me to use during my upcoming visit. My contact at the bank was horrified by my story. They assured me that they, their employees, and any consultants or contractors working with them would never use that cab company again. They were adamant about finding a more reliable and customer-friendly transportation service for their business needs. Over the next 2 weeks, my contact followed through on their promise. They researched and contracted with a new, reputable cab company to provide transportation services for their clients and employees. It was a considerable blow to the cab company that had wronged me. When I returned to Philly for my next business trip, I was delighted to find that the new cab company provided excellent service. The drivers were professional, the cars were well maintained, and there was a noticeable absence of the shitty practices that had marred my previous experience. As the months went by, the original cab company saw a significant drop in business from my clients and others in the area. Word had spread about their unscrupulous practices and lack of concern for passenger safety. They struggled to compete with a new reputable cab company that had gained favor with the bank and its clients. The cab company's reputation continued to plummet, and it wasn't long before they began losing contracts with other local businesses as well. Their revenue took a nosedive, and they were forced to make cutbacks to stay afloat. It was a satisfying sight to see them face the consequences of their horrible actions. In the end, I had my revenge, not through anger or retaliation, but by using the power of word of mouth and the influence of a major client. Okay, so for backstory. This happened several years ago now, back when I was still in high school, living a hell of a life in a bad sense. I had no friends, no support, nothing a kid in school really wanted. It was an international school in Germany, so it was full of entitled and elitist kids, which just made it worse. On top of that, I was being bullied by several people in my year, as well as a few from the year above me. Now I'm big, tough gal on the outside, 6'3" tall and built like a tree, but safety comes in numbers, and I wasn't violent. I just looked the part, so they abused that. I was bullied daily for being too big, not looking good, being erratic due to my ADHD, and several things I had done when I was much younger, like once biting a kid in self-defense and using my thumb to bite on during times of stress, which looked like suckling. I was also ostracized from pretty much all schoolyard activities, lunch groups, clubs, and anything else where people congregate. I lived life on the fringe of my school, but I eventually got comfortable with it and made it my lot in this part of life to be alone and to not expect or depend on friendships. Now, one day, I realized people were actually talking to me and acting like I was their friend or something like that, even though none of these people had ever said anything nice to me in my life, nor had I ever spoken to them before. So there was no reason we will be friends. I, being the guarded, paranoid teen I was, just kinda played it off awkwardly and went about my business. This went on for about 3 to 4 weeks until I was cornered outside in a schoolyard sitting by a tree, reading a book by a guy from a year above me. I still remember the conversation that occurred to this day, as I do the others, so I will be writing them down for extra details. The bully says, "So why the hell are you ignoring me?" "Because I don't like you. Have never liked you, and we don't even know each other beyond you bullying me in previous years. But that's in the past, so it doesn't matter, right? Why won't you just accept me and stop ignoring me?" Now, being the lone socially awkward girl that I was, I thought this dude was asking me out, and I panicked that he was trying to force me into a relationship with him. So I closed my book and got up. He was taller than me, so that wasn't too easy. I tell him, "Accept you? Are you crazy? No way. No. I'm not dating you." "What? Dating? What are you talking about?" "I meant my friend request on X social network." So now I just looked at him confused and shook my head at that, but being paranoid, I also said, "I didn't get that yet." To which he replied, "Oh, I'll send it to you again then. Sorry." And then he just walked off nonchalantly, like he didn't just corner me against a tree in public. And there were some people around staring at me with wide eyes, and I printed all their faces into my brain. Fast forward about a week in which this same thing kept happening with several of my bullies and people I had never so much as known to even exist. Simply because I never shared any of my classes with them. I grew more and more paranoid as time went by until finally I decided to look at the website to see what was going on. And there I was, at least a profile of me was. There was cool pictures in it, pictures that had been taken during class trips, pictures that my parents had on their Facebook accounts of me with everyone else cropped out. There was my age, my height, my name, but no birth date or anything else. My heart dropped to my shoes. I was destroyed. But then there was a spark of revenge coming on. See, I knew who the people that had started badgering me about this profile were. I knew which of my bullies at the time were most active on a social media platform. I knew the people they hung out with and called their friends. I was a very observant teenager due to always having to be on guard. So I started compiling a list of all the pictures that had been pulled from social media and otherwise been placed without my prior knowledge. With my dad, who did photo editing to make his nature photography really stand out, as well as him knowing a good bit of computer stuff. I worked for him for 2 weeks to put everything together with timestamps and all. I didn't go to the counselor, whom I had a terrible relationship with, since he had on several occasions told me to simply forget that I was being bullied, and instead took it straight to my school's principal, a man who has publicly said to my face that maybe I should fail myself for the year because I obviously wasn't cut out for this yet. I had serious issues following a lot of classes because I was being attacked in them sometimes and I didn't do homework, which was a part of one's grade, because I just couldn't bring school home due to the stress it caused. The principal laughed it off as a harmless prank. My identity being stolen and used on social media was harmless. He said this to my face, with my dad present in a room with us. While I sat there in stunned silence, my dad went on a rant that an identity being stolen wasn't harmless, and that this was no way a school's principal should be reacting to news about a student's distress about that fact. The principal went on to say that if it bothered us that much, we could just move schools. This was the only international school even remotely close to where we lived at the time, with the next nearest one being at least a 2-hour round-trip commute. So he would have known that moving wasn't an option. He just didn't care. Me and my dad left the meeting with my dad looking very angry and with me feeling weak and defeated. Then my dad said, "Do you know who's behind this?" I told him I didn't know exactly. All I knew was the people who had badgered me about it first, and the people they were friends with. Then my dad suggested we go to the police. And me being B, angsty, terrified high schooler, was terrified at the thought, but at the same time, I wanted this to end. So I agreed. Turns out that meticulously piled picture evidence of pictures I never made, nor wanted to be made, nor wanted to be posted, along with my vehement testimony that I never made nor wanted that profile, was enough for the chief of the station that we were at to be able to consider actually beginning to investigate into the identity fraud case. The testimony of my father against my principal was also enough to have the police work together with the school's administrative board to investigate the principal for negligence. I helped the police with frequent descriptions of people who had haunted me about it, and about the several smaller things I had heard the principal say, as well as what he'd say to my face on several earlier occasions. The "isn't fit for the school" statement. I was relishing this ability to finally speak out about the things that I had felt, the things that had been said, the things that had been done to me, and was going into full, complete detail of everything that my bullies had ever done, even before this identity fraud thing. Somehow this seemed to spur the investigating officer to look deeper, even pull in a cyber consultant to start tracking who made the account. 2 more weeks later, the person who first approached me, a guy who I share my second language English class with, comes up to me, and in this barely sarcastic tone asks me why I stopped being active on a friend's website. I told him I'd never been active there, and he walked a little too close. "Oh, come on. You've been talking to people for weeks, and then a few days ago, you just stopped. What gives?" This set off all the alarm bells in my head. I told him the same thing again, that I'd never been active on a site, nor that I ever wanted to be. Then I left, elbowing my way past him as he tried moving closer to block my path. Several days later, I'm called into the director's office over the school's intercom system. I call my dad on the way there and he tells me he's already there. I walk there dreading what was going on. Once I got there, this is what I saw inside. My dad standing next to a police officer. The director is sitting at his desk. The principal was in front of the desk, looking smug as hell. 3 kids and their parents were also in a room. One of the moms looked like she was about to murder someone. One dad looked very defeated and another mom looked super smug. I realized this was a disciplinary meeting and smiled. The police officer looked at the director, who then looked at my dad, who gave a nod to me. I was asked to tell my whole story again. I told all the stuff I said about the others here. The account online, the bullying, and the principal's repeated telling me to my face that I wasn't fit to be in that school. The police officer then talked about how there was evidence that these 3 kids had worked together to fabricate the account, and that the parents stood to be charged with negligence, with the kids standing to be tried as minors for identity theft. And if I were to press charges. The smug mom then tried to leverage me by observing that the kids have been nicer to me because of it, and that I should let them be kids. The principal just kind of sat there defeated and was subsequently fired and told to vacate his office and the premises. My dad wanted to say something to the mom, but I beat him to it. I still remember the glee in my heart. Well, I would also like to be a kid whose likeness isn't used online without me knowing or wanting it there. I would like to not have to fear for my own life and people's thoughts of me, but you don't care about that. So why should I listen to you? I then turned to the police officer and said that we wanted to press charges. More police officers came in and the parents and kids were taken away. I stayed at school and some people actually looked at me like I was a hero after that, while some resented me forever after that incident as well. I have never one moment regretted suing those people and getting the principal fired, and to this day, it's one of my proudest moments. The principal ended up getting fired the day of the meeting and was banned from teaching in our province again for the next 20 years. Basically, past retirement. In court, he was charged with negligence of duty and fined €2,000. All 3 kids were expelled, effective immediately. They were found guilty of identity theft as a minor and sentenced to a month of community service. All the parents were charged with negligence of parental duty and a few hours of community service, and the mom who said that the kids should be left alone because they were just kids and who had encouraged her child was charged with misdemeanor encouragement and fined €1,000. Hi, I'm planning a lovely bridesmaid entourage for my wedding consisting of my beautiful sister and cousins. We are all on very good terms. Today I told my sister that I thought of navy blue dresses for bridesmaids. I sent her a couple pictures very enthusiastically. I thought it's elegant, matches with the suits and gives a nice pop to the white wedding dress on pictures. The response from my sister was instant. "You can't be serious. I won't wear that. Everyone will hate that. Or is it that you want all of us to look like crap? I heard there are weddings where the bride wants to make bridesmaid look intentionally bad. That's probably your plan, isn't it?" Whoa. She said her color type is autumn and navy looks the worst on that complexion. My cousins, she said, are also autumn and I will make them look the worst too. After my heart sank, I started looking for alternate colors on this season's color wheel thing. I sent her a couple of alternatives suggested, different deep blues. She replied that she then doesn't want to be my bridesmaid but wants to be pretty. She would attend all the getting ready with the girls but won't wear the matching dress. I read this happens in bridal parties. There is usually one difficult person. The suggestion is to ask them to step down as bridesmaid. For me, it obviously didn't come to that, as my sister stepped down without bad discussion. Her point of view is that I should care about people feeling good at my wedding and I don't have much empathy. I cried for a bit, then I told my sister honestly that after this I will have a sad and angry feeling every time I'd look at her at the wedding, in her pretty dress, being satisfied with herself at my expense. And maybe it's best if she's not there then. Am I the jerk here? And now some comments on the post. Someone saying you're not the jerk. Remove your sister from the bridal party. Go with the color you have chosen, it's your wedding, not hers. And if she wants to attend the girls getting ready, then she needs to accept her responsibilities and dress like the rest of them. If you're not at the bridal party, you don't get to do the fun stuff. You, as a bride, don't have to have anyone there that A, you don't want, and B, will make you sad when you look back on the pictures. Another commenter adds, you're not the jerk. For someone saying you have no empathy, her statement regarding your dress choices were really rude and insulting. It sounds like you were willing to compromise and find dresses that both you and your wedding party liked. Your sister took things to the extreme really quickly. I wasn't very kind to you. Hi, I'm just an ordinary guy. Well, perhaps a little less ordinary. You see, I'm autistic and I've got my trusty sidekick, Storm, a border collie who's in training to be a psychiatric assistant animal. We've been on quite a journey together, and today I'm going to share with you one of the wildest adventures we've had to date. I can't help but think this story belongs on r/entitled people, and it all started when we boarded a train for a ride into the city. Storm and I have been working diligently to prepare him for his role as my psychiatric assistant animal. This means getting him accustomed to different environments, sounds, and smells. For our training, we often need to ride on trains, airplanes, and visit various buildings. On this particular day, we were headed for a 1 hour and 15-minute train ride to the city. We got on a train at the front right next to the guard, as we usually do. The guard was aware of our situation and gave us a green light. I showed him the letter stating Storm was in training, and everything seemed fine. Storm, being the well-behaved collie he is, nestled himself under my legs, taking up as little space as possible, just like he was trained to do. But then came the moment that would lead to an encounter with two of the most entitled people I have ever met, Karen and her daughter, whom I've lovingly nicknamed Karen Jr. At the first stop, in walked Karen and her daughter Karen Jr., and they took the seats on the other side of the aisle, right next to me. It didn't take long for Karen Jr. to spot Storm and express her interest in him. "Mom, that man has a dog. Can I pet it?" Karen Jr. inquired. Her mother replied with something along the lines of, "Just ask." At that time, I wasn't paying much attention to their conversation as I was trying to stay focused on our training. The next thing I knew, I heard, "Excuse me," from Karen Jr. And that's when the following conversation took place. "Could I pet your dog?" "I'm sorry, but no. He's currently in training and cannot be pet." "What do you mean he's training?" "He's training to be an assistant animal, and it's very important that no one interferes with him." Karen tells her, "Come back, sweetie. Unfortunately, some people don't know how to share." I was trying my best to remain calm, but Storm could sense that my anxiety was flaring up. He got up and comforted me exactly as he was trained to do. I rewarded him with a treat and a hearty good boy, and then gave him the lay command. This is when the situation escalated. The Karen approached us. "You should be teaching him to interact with children. My daughter just wanted to give him a pat, and you rewarding him for ignoring her is just plain rude." "Excuse me? He's working and currently in training. I rewarded him for responding to me appropriately, not for ignoring your kid. Please just leave us alone." "You're lying. He's not a Labrador. They are the only dogs that are smart enough to become assistance animals. He looks like a border collie. They are just farm dogs, so quit lying." My anxiety was reaching its peak as Storm, always by my side, got up and sat on my lap to comfort and calm me down. I reached for my tree pouch to give him another reward, but Karen, with her brazen entitlement, reached in and took a tree before me. "Good boy." That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. I screamed, "Get away from me!" and tears streamed down my face. The train came to an unscheduled stop at the next station, and a group of police officers boarded. Karen and Karen Jr. were swiftly moved to the next carriage, and an officer stayed with me until the next station. But this was far from the end of our encounter with the entitled Jew. Fast forward to the end of the line, and we arrived in the city. As I was talking to the guard who had actually arranged for the police to join us, Karen and Karen Jr. spotted us. Karen Jr. made a beeline for us, and just as I saw her hand reach out towards Storm, I gave him the command "other side," and he swiftly moved behind and to my left, away from her. I said, "I told you no." "Well, my mom said I could, so let me." With that, she tried to pull Storm's leash out of my hand. In that split second, I made a crucial decision. I dropped the lead and gave Storm the command "danger." He knew what to do. He bolted and sat under a seat in the middle of the platform, safely away from the chaos unfolding around him. And then Karen entered the scene, pushing me on a shoulder. This point, my flight or flight response took over. I pushed her back and she tumbled to the ground. More police officers appeared on the platform within what felt like seconds. I called for Storm, and as the officers arrived, I handed them his paperwork and explained everything that had happened. It was a relief to see the authorities take swift actions. Karen was arrested for assault and interfering with a service dog. Now, here I am, writing this from inside the police station, waiting to provide a victim impact statement. I couldn't have anticipated that our journey to the city would take such a dramatic turn. But it's a story I felt compelled to share with you all. When I was a sophomore in high school, I never thought I'd see the day when I'd finally get the chance for some sweet, sweet revenge. This is a story of how I turned the tables on my high school nemesis, B, with a little help from my sister. It all started back in high school. I was just a sophomore minding my own business, trying to get through each day like any other student. There was this girl, B, who was a junior, and she had a particular interest in me, or so it seemed. Every time I turned around, there she was, staring at me with a deep and inexplicable anger. I had never even talked to her before, let alone done anything to warrant such hostility. Our classes weren't in the same room, but they were close by, and when the junior classes let out a few minutes before the final bell, they often passed through our area. That's when it all started. B would shoot me dirty looks, roll her eyes, and make snide, indirect comments. I was utterly confused because the semester had just begun and I couldn't fathom why I had become the target of her wrath. Things escalated quickly. B and her posse of friends, who I can only describe as looking like rats, began spreading rumors, making snide remarks, and even resorted to grunting noises when we crossed paths in the hallways. This continued not only through my sophomore year but also into my junior year. It felt like I was stuck in a never-ending nightmare with no way to escape. However, my senior year finally brought some relief. B and her toxic friends moved on, and I could breathe a little easier. High school was bad enough, but those years have been marred by their relentless harassment. I thought I had seen the last of them. Fast forward to a few years later, I had graduated high school and moved on with my life. My older sister, S, had become the manager of a coffee shop downtown. One day, sister mentioned that she'd hired a new employee who had attended the same high school as I did. When I asked her for the new employee's name, sister provided it without hesitation. I quickly searched the name on Facebook, and to my shock, it was none other than B, the girl who made my high school life miserable. I called my sister immediately, and as I shared the news, she couldn't believe it. "Oh my god, what the hell? That girl had always been late for work," sister exclaimed. She had given B a warning for her tardiness but let it slide when B explained that she desperately needed a job due to financial difficulties. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony of it all. B was struggling to make ends meet while I was thriving. It was an opportunity too good to pass up, and my sister and I concocted a plan to exact revenge on my high school tormentor. The plan was simple but deliciously satisfying. Sister informed me that B was scheduled to work a particular shift, and it happened that the other employees on that shift were friends of mine. They too had their share of unpleasant encounters with B, and they were eager to join in on our plan. They couldn't stand B, and she had always acted differently when the manager was around. The day of reckoning arrived, and there I was wearing my sister's coffee shop uniform, pretending to be the new manager. My sister, who was hiding nearby, kept a close eye on us. As I introduced myself to the employees, I couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. B walked in, oblivious to who I really was. When our eyes met, I couldn't suppress a mischievous grin. I approached her and introduced myself, playing the role of the stern manager, and began asking her some tough questions about her job. Her face displayed a mixture of surprise and confusion. Then I asked a question that had been burning inside me for years. "Do you remember me?" B hesitated for a moment but eventually responded, "Yeah, but, the past is the past, right?" I could hardly contain my amusement as I confronted her about all the torment she had put me and my friend through. At that moment, one of my friends from high school came out, introduced herself, and asked B if she remembered her as well. B's shock was palpable as she realized that we were all connected. I pressed her for an explanation of why she had treated us so horribly, and her response was far from satisfactory. B started hurling insults at me and my friend, calling us witches and expressing her disdain for the job. She claimed she had never liked it anyway, despite it being her third job. Her track record wasn't exactly stellar, as she had been fired from her previous 2 jobs and ironically had listed them on her resume. Her frustration boiled over and she began tossing objects around the coffee shop, eventually smashing a large vase on the ground. That was a moment my sister, who had been closely watching the drama unfold, decided to make her grand entrance. She arrived with a police officer who also happened to be her boyfriend. Sister firmly informed me that she was fired, and the police officer, with a stern voice, began reciting the Miranda rights. "You have the right to remain silent." The look on P's face as a police officer placed handcuffs on her was priceless. The entire coffee shop watched as she was led away, and the satisfaction I felt was immeasurable. Finally, B was getting a taste of the consequences. Later that day, my sister, the other employees, and I joined forces to clean up the mess B had left in her wake. My sister, despite not being responsible for the destruction, paid for the damages out of her own pocket as a gesture of goodwill to her loyal employees who had been caught up in the drama. She offered her apologies for what had transpired, even though she had been working undercover. A few months later, I heard the satisfaction news that B had been charged with thousands of dollars in damages and sentenced to 100 hours of community service. The charges included destruction of property and harassment, among other things. My sister, having pressed charges against her, also made sure to highlight the fact that B had been a bully, not just to me, but to many others, including my friends. This happened about 7 years ago. I, male 29, used to work in a store whose name sounds a lot like those cops that ride in planes. On this particular day, I was at the register when a well-dressed guy and 3 women walked in. Each of them took a cart and started walking around picking things out. I was known for my no-nonsense attitude at the register. You throw money at me, give me attitude, whatever. I'll do it right back to you. So when a coordinator came to me 30 minutes later and asked me to assist the guy and his group on my register, I already knew we were in for a fun time. They rolled up with 3 carts full of clothes, and not just any stuff. We're talking shoes and boots that cost $300 to $800, expensive handbags, coats, and more. I was just there thinking, oh heck. They walked up and I started scanning. All the while, these ladies were being unpleasant. Finally, I got through it all, and the total came up to about $3,000. The guy reached into his coat and pulled out a wad of cash, all crisp $100 bills. Immediately, I knew something was off, so I took the money and went to the machine to check it. The first bill didn't pass. and neither did the second. So I turned back around and told the guy that I couldn't accept the money. Before I even had a chance to fully explain, one of the women cut me off and told me to take the money and do my damn job. Cue malicious compliance. I said, you know what? You got it. Let me get the manager so he can help. See, at our discretion, we can decline a formal payment. For example, if 2 of your cards get declined, you've got to use cash. If your cash doesn't pass, you have to use a card. Or we can just tell you to go away. But if we suspect you're using fake money, we have to try and keep you there while we get the cops. So, I went to the manager, cash in hand, and told him what was going on. He went to the office and checked the money. Now, the guy was nervous, but just imagine his panic when 2 cops walked in and headed straight for us. His horrified face made my day. The cops took my statement, and the next thing you know, all 4 of them were getting arrested. One of the women was screaming and cursing at me while I told her, in the most innocent voice I could pull off, "You told me to do my job." Hey everyone, I need your opinion on something that's been bothering me lately. I love my husband dearly, we have a beautiful life together with 2 amazing children. I don't ask for much because I'm more than capable of doing or buying for myself. But there is this one thing that's been nagging at me, and I need to know if I'm the jerk here. When we got engaged, there was no grand proposal. No surprise on one knee. It wasn't really his style, and I understood that. We both knew we wanted to get married because we talked about the life we wanted to build together. We started building it. So, it was never really a question of whether we would get married, but what bothered me was that it was like pulling teeth to get a ring. Finally, after some nudging, I got the ring. But we decided to have a simple courthouse wedding. Neither of us wanted anything extravagant, and we were on the same page about that. We always said that we didn't want a big wedding, but we did plan to have a reception for family and a honeymoon. The reception happened and it was lovely. Our families were thrilled to celebrate with us and we had a great time. But the honeymoon, the one thing I truly wanted other than a happy, healthy marriage and children, never happened. Now, I understand that it wouldn't be a true honeymoon as it's been a couple of years and we have 2 beautiful children. But my desire was for a nice, relaxing honeymoon meant just for the 2 of us. I longed for some quality time together, away from the daily hustle and bustle. A few days ago, I mustered up the courage to bring up the honeymoon topic again. My husband didn't outright reject the idea, but he didn't seem enthusiastic to discuss it either. That left me quite upset. I got frustrated and admittedly a bit angry. I want to clarify that I am always mindful not to say anything hurtful because words have a powerful impact. However, I did express my feelings and I think it's only fair. I mentioned that I've done a lot for our family and I didn't even insist on having a huge wedding. My only wish was a honeymoon and I believed I deserved it. I believe it's essential to communicate our needs and desires in a relationship. I want our bond to remain strong and I thought a honeymoon could help us rekindle our connection. Now here is where I'm struggling with whether I'm the jerk. I've decided that I'm planning a honeymoon with or without him. I'm more than willing to travel alone if he's not willing to plan it with me. Of course, at any moment he could express his desire to go and I will be thrilled. But until then, I've resolved to do this alone. So am I the jerk here? And now some comments on the post. Someone saying, I suppose I have to say you are the jerk because there is absolutely no reason to call this a honeymoon except for the purpose of digging at him. Simply put, you did not have a honeymoon. You could have demanded one at the time, but you didn't. It just didn't happen. It's too late to have a honeymoon. This is a vacation, and yes, you can take yourself on a vacation yourself as long as you run it by him. But calling it a solo honeymoon is just stirring the pot. Another commenter adds, you are the jerk. A honeymoon without one of the partners is oxymoronic. Just call it a holiday or a vacation. A third commenter goes with, everybody's a jerk. Your husband for lacking any kind of follow-through on anything, and you for insisting that you're taking a honeymoon alone. Well, that's not a honeymoon, that's just a trip. You're taking a trip. Here is the thing. You said it was like pulling teeth to actually get engaged to him and he never actually proposed. So it fits that it's also like pulling teeth to plan a honeymoon/vacation with this man. He's the same guy you married. He showed you who he was before you married him. For better or worse, you chose to marry him anyway.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.